welcome to the Garden Railway, and in these few programmes we're having a look at ways of enhancing your garden railway and turning it into something truly spectacular. We've put some buildings in, and I think the church here is looking quite nice atop the hill, but it's a church sat in a sea of crumbling soil. What we need is some vegetation. Now, amongst all the other things that I know nothing about, gardening is one of them. I need help. Well, Becky, you know, I can see why we've come to visit you in your garden. You're obviously very capable indeed. How long has this garden been? How long have you lived here?
22 years we've lived here, but the garden has evolved very sort of slowly over those years.
Yeah. Some wonderful plants here. I mean, are those azers there, is that correct?
Yes, those trees are acers, yes, and they're quite protected down there on the patio.
Well, now, this is the problem that I have, Becky. At the moment, one comes around the house and just sees this massive blot on the landscape, really. Whereas what I'd really like is someone to come round the corner of the house, see the garden, say, what a fantastic garden, and then notice that there's a railway there.
What, you mean like this?
Very much like this, indeed. Now, this is wonderful, isn't it? How have you gone about this? Has it always been like this?
No, not at all. Again, this has gradually evolved over the years, and initially when we came, it was just an oval of track.
Right.
And grass in the middle and an apple tree, and that didn't look very good. So
right.
We gradually, you know, dawned on us that it would be much more interesting if it was planted up so that the plants suited the scale of the railway and the garden blended with the railway.
So what sorts of plants have you got around here?
We've got a mixture of conifers and dwarf shrubs and alpines,
right,
which suit the conditions here because it's quite free draining.
This is an interesting bit here, isn't it? What have you got going on here?
Well, this is a really brilliant shrub. If you're only going to have one, I'd say you should have this one. This is a honeysuckle.
A honeysuckle?
It doesn't look like it, but it's called Lonicera nitida, Bagesson's gold.
Right.
And I'm going to hopefully grow it up over hazel hoops to meet the other side and form a tunnel for the trains.
A natural tunnel?
If you have just an individual cutting, you can grow it on and form like a little weeping tree.
Yeah.
And you can see it wants to grow up. Well, you can either let it or not. You just prune it if you don't want it to grow up.
It almost terrifies me in a way. You know, the thought of putting one of these into the ground, you know, my big old lummoxy fingers, you know, snapping it. You know, is there a technique to it? You know, is it fairly easy?
Well, it is fairly easy. You just have to be careful, really.
So now you're going to plant this, are you? This particular one?
Yes, this is another Lonicera cutting.
Yeah. And
it's rather a strange shape at the moment, but once it's in and getting established, then I'll decide what I'm going to do with it. Now, because this area has already been planted and there's gravel put on, which is put on partly because it looks better and also because it acts as a mulch and it stops weeds coming through.
Right.
And also helps it retain moisture. So I'm going to have to scrape away some of the gravel which has been put on.
Right.
And I'll put that back again afterwards.
Now this little pocket that of soil that you've got here is almost identical to one of the little pockets that I've got. I mean, are these plants that you've got here, are they suited to what will be, you know, well-drained soil in my garden?
Yes, I should say they would be.
Yeah.
Nearly all of these would be suited, and obviously some better than others.
Is that just a matter now of putting that in the earth?
Well, I'll dig the hole.
Should I put a drop of water in there as well, or is it not
always make sure before you actually plant it that it's well watered.
Yeah.
This is damp.
This is quite clearly damp soil, isn't it?
And this is damp soil, but however damp it is, you should always water it as well.
And is that it then? Dig a hole and plonk it in? Anything else?
Could you pass me the bowl over there? There's some bone meal in it. I'm going to put
that's what this is. I thought this was a bit of sand or something.
Yeah,
so what is it, ground up?
No, it's
what is bone meal?
It's an organic fertiliser.
Oh, right.
And it helps the roots to develop.
Yeah.
You just need a little sprinkling in there.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to tap the plant out, which you can see is well watered.
Yes.
Put it in there.
Yeah.
Now I think I might have it that way around. I am going to prune this eventually. I'm going to give it a drink.
All right, oh yeah, blimey, it takes a lot, doesn't it?
And then carefully put the soil back like that.
Now then, Becky, another thing that I spotted down the end of the garden here, I've got my vertically placed sleepers, and I'm looking for a mass of colour to tumble down over it. And I've noticed you've got, you know, exactly what I think it's exactly what I'm looking for.
Well, this is a variety of phlox, Prog.13, which comes in an assortment of colours.
Yeah.
And it does look lovely this time of year.
Yeah.
Then it will need a bit of a tidy up later.
Now, it is absolutely lovely being in the hands of an expert, Becky, I have to say, because I've got so many questions to ask. And one of them is this. I've noticed, lucky chap that I am, on my travels around all the various garden railways, the prevalence of our old friend the conifer. But I wouldn't mind being a little bit different, and I notice you've taken the same sort of route yourself with a different selection of miniature trees. I mean, what's this one here?
This is a dwarf elm, which is growing quite well. If we wanted to really restrict its growth, I would have planted it still in its pot,
Right.
which would have restricted the roots.
Right.
But instead, I'm choosing to prune it to keep it to the shape and size that we want, really.
You've got quite a nice array of colours here without any flowers actually being evident, haven't you? Just on pure
Yes.
foliage alone.
Well, if you just go for flowers for your colour, then you're going to have a very limited season. But you can have interesting coloured foliage like this hebe here.
That's a hebe, is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a lovely bronze colour
Yeah.
in the winter.
Oh, what's that one next to it there? That's quite
That one
interesting.
there is a dwarf weeping willow. There are so many what they call patio plants now, which are suitable to be grown either in tubs and which won't grow too tall. And if you look out for them, they can sometimes be suitable for the railway too.
I suppose all I need to do now is get myself down to the old garden centre.
Yes, but once you're there, you must go very carefully and read the labels and
Right.
make sure that the eventual height and spread of the plant will be suitable for your railway.
Okay.
And that the soil conditions that the plant requires suit the soil conditions that you've got.
All right.
Otherwise, you're going to be in for some expensive mistakes.
Okay.
Right, but I could get you started if you like and give you a couple of cuttings. How's that?
Yeah, result. Okay. Actually, I've got a few ideas along those lines. Becky, I was wondering about this one over here. This took my fancy earlier on. Obviously that. Over there. What's this? Cool, blimey, a wealth of information from Becky there. Quite a lot for my little brain to take in. All those Latin names. God, Mo, Mars and Matt, that's as far as I ever went at school. Luckily, in the garden centres, they write all the names in English as well, so at least I had a vague idea of what I was doing. Now then, here in my garden, I have created for myself a little bit of a troublesome area. By putting in the magnificent trestle bridge, I've cut off access to this whole corner. So that threw me a little bit of a curve. And, well, I think I might have solved it by putting in this acer here. And hopefully that will spread and create a nice dappled light over the whole area. I'll think of a few plants to put around the base of it. Don't tell next door, but I'm going to nick a bit of their honeysuckle and trail it over the fence. It should look absolutely brilliant. And down here at the base of the trestle bridge is the concrete footing. So I've gone for a few of these. These are Amelia. Okay, and they're a wide-spreading ground plant, and hopefully they'll spread over this whole area and hide the concrete. Now you'll notice nothing planted yet. It's all still in pots. A good idea if you're going to do this, starting from scratch, keep them all in pots. Keep them all in pots for days and play around with them and move them about and see what best suits you. Now then, always good for garden railways. Becky mentioned it, and I've gone out and bought a few of them, the miniature trees. These are just little conifers, and I thought a good place to place these would be up here round at the church, all right next to each other, and hopefully that will create the effect of a little churchyard. I'm going to work on the basis of big at the back and small at the front, and I thought this might look quite nice right at the back of the garden, right atop the summit here. Now, what do you think of that? Just put that there. As I say, the great thing about leaving things in pots for several days is that you can move things around and suit yourself. Always remember to water them every night, of course. I think that could look really nice. Now then, when I was chatting to Becky, I declared an interest in having plants that fall over the sleepers here. Quite tricky, and she did actually warn me off putting ivy in. But I saw this and I like it, and it's got nice small leaves. So it's in scale with the railway, and that should look quite nice, just tumbling between the cracks of the sleepers here. The fences, ooh, big problems as far as we're concerned. Nothing wrong with the fence, they're just huge areas. So our thoughts, our debates in the household, shall we paint it, shall we not? I think we probably will paint it. We'll either go for a black or maybe a green, something like that, just to try and lose it a little bit. But once we've done that, let's grow something over it. This is a clematis, and by this time next year, this hopefully will be covering that fence and be in full bloom. This is a funny little area here underneath the bridge. You can see there's an old concrete wheelbarrow there at the moment. That's definitely on its way out. And this shrub, well, maybe we damaged it when we were laying all this concrete and what have you. But a good old friend of the garden railway is the herb. And here we have a little bit of rosemary, and hopefully that'll grow into a lovely bush here at the front and smell absolutely wonderful. By the way, finally, the Acer that Becky had in her garden. I couldn't resist it. I had a bit of money spare, so I bought it. But slightly difficult to place in this particular garden here, because this doesn't like the early morning sun and likes to be kept nice and shady. And there's only one bit in the garden that is like that, and it's underneath this tree here. And I think that, once it's established, is going to look absolutely wonderful. I've got some pottering around to do. See you in a couple of minutes. Oh, I don't know. This is about the third time I've moved these plants around. What do you think? I'll tell you what I think. This is going to be one enormous dither. I have made my mind up about something though. Moss. Keen to have a little bit of moss here in the garden, but not so sure that it's going to grow here. It's very dry and hot, and moss of course likes wet and damp conditions, but I have found this in the garden centre. This is a plant called Sagina or Sagina, and it's a moss-like growth, covers a wide area, and I thought I'd plant a couple of those just here on this ledge to give me a little lawn effect. I'll put a white picket fence around it and maybe a couple of little figures just leaning over, doing a bit of train spotting. The other thing I've been up to, with our old friend the conifer. And there you go. This was an ordinary shaped conifer, came out like that in the normal V, inverted V shape. And I've just trimmed off the lower branches of it to give me, well, you'll see what I mean. If I put it up here, there, and then if you look at it from down here and ignore the pot, you've got a mighty fine English oak. Now, don't think I've been rude and forgotten all about Becky Pinniger's cuttings, because they're right here. She gave me these lovely little alpines here, and these are quite easy to plant, and I think I've already found a place for this one here. That's definitely going to nestle there, and if that grows and reproduces, that'll fill that crack up very nicely there. Oh, by the way, these rocks here, still looking a little bit new for me. A couple of little tricks of the trade here. You could rub live yogurt into them and just leave it, and that'll encourage a green growth, or even cheaper, you can wee on them. See you later.
My name's Peter Jiggins. I called this railway Buggles Kelly. It's named after a fictitious station that was in an old black and white film with Will Hay. This was built, started in spring last year. It's a double circuit. I had this layout at the previous house. It seemed to work quite well, so I kept it for this garden. Half the buildings are scratch built out of PVC, which is normally used for soffits in houses, which works out relatively cheap. The other half are from German kits, Polar, Pico, etc. The previous garden I had grey ballast, which after a few months tended to look a bit dirty and bedraggled. So this time I've kept with white. It's not quite the scale colour-wise, but some of the Swiss railways do have an almost white ballast. It is overscale, but this helps if it gets onto the lawn. I can see it before the lawnmower chops it up. The water feature is a 4 metre length of guttering. The sump under the church is a central heating header expansion tank which houses the pump, and the pump feeds water up a hose to the water mill at the far end. There's a lot more to come yet, but no definite plans, but it'll be multi-elevated eventually.
Another great layout. Now, remember the houses that Valerie Pratt made for us way back when? Here's one of them here. Very nicely detailed, lovely painting. See what I mean? Now look at this. This is part of a kit that I've bought. Looks slightly different, doesn't it? What it'll eventually look like is this. This is the Walden Junction loco shed. Now, to my mind, this looks slightly cheap and nasty. Trust me, this is not cheap. Okay, but this is how it comes out. This is a very flat bit of plastic. I mean, there's detail there, there's relief, but there's no sort of colour, nothing. Well, I think that it could be enhanced. So how do we go about it? Well, this is how you do it. First of all, grab yourself some sort of paint that will attach itself to whatever you're trying to paint. In this case, we are going to use enamel paint, available in all good model shops. So, your sponge, a little bit of brown paint like this. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and just bring out a bit of detail. See that? On those bricks there. As we all know by now, the saffron line is a line that's in trouble. It's teetering on the edge. It's a line that really doesn't have very much money for upkeep. And so all the buildings, including the junction at Walden, are looking slightly tatty. I think that that's brought those out quite nicely and given it already a little bit of detail, but here's another little useful bit. Let's try and bring the mortar out in between these bricks. Again, we want to use one of these itty bitty little tubs of paint. Let me just open that up. And a useful device for mixing our paints up is this. This is the bottom of a plastic milk carton. Pour your little bit of paint in there. Okay. And with a fresh sponge, dab away on the bricks. Okay. Hope this works. There we go. And I think, hopefully, you can see already that that is bringing out the detail of those bricks and just giving it a little bit of added dimension. And I'm not too worried on this particular building how rough and ready it looks. This is a building that needs to have all the mortar replaced. So that's my job for the next few hours, I guess, putting this together. While I do that, you can have a look at this.
My name's David Pinniger and this is the Ambledon Valley Railway. My big love is running steam locomotives. I started collecting my first steam engine from Archangel 25 years ago and I've been collecting them ever since. I've got meths and gas-fired ones, but my absolute favourite is a coal-fired model of the Darjeeling B-class. My fascination with garden railways is that you can operate steam engines on your own railway in the garden. And it's very much like running a real railway. You have the same problems as a real railway has. You have to contend with the weather, you have to maintain the track. It's a railway which you build but then evolves, and this railway has evolved over the last 22 years. Well, my layout is a freelance narrow gauge line, which is 32mm gauge, and it's based on an English bucolic branch line, not any particular prototype, but has elements of all sorts of different railways. The main line runs out from the main station at Bishop's Amble. It runs out through a triangle past Hinton Magnolia, then round up to Higher Buxton, and then back down. You can carry on round the loop, round the main line, or come straight back down to Bishop's Amble again. The main station at Bishop's Amble I made about 15 years ago, and it's simply made from stripwood pinned together with a regular coat of wood preservative. It's lasted quite well. The engine shed and the other ceramic buildings are made by a chap called Stuart Curry, and they're fired ceramic, so they're totally weatherproof and stay out all year. I have tried other ceramic buildings which suffer from frost damage, but these don't. The bridge is a model of an American prototype, and it's made from cedar, and it's held together with truss rods and bolts, so it is not screwed in the normal way, so it's just held together by friction. And it was made by an American railroad modeller and brought over here to Cookham and given to me as a present. The track is handmade using nickel, silver or brass rail, which is held in place by metal chairs, as the prototypes were, onto wood sleepers, and it's all pinned together. One of my other railway interests is in American narrow gauge railways, so we have a small cameo area which is the American side of the railroad, and that is Alder Creek Depot and the water tower by it. Yeah, the great thing about steam in the garden is that it incorporates a lot of different things which really are exciting. I work with Becky with the railway, and it's very relaxing to sit and watch a steam train run round on an evening and just listen to it and smell the coal smoke.
Now if I put that there, that might hide it a little bit. This is that engine shed from earlier on in the programme. Been trying to weather it. I don't know with any success or not really. It still looks very plasticky to me. Still, each to his own. The end of the programme's upon us once again, and there is something I can be getting on with. These flowers aren't going to plant themselves. See you on the next one. Bye. Right, you are definitely going to go in there. That's for sure.